Hi, everyone. This is Steve. I'm going to try something different this year with LTEL Data Team. I'm going to try to kind of flip the classroom, push out some information, the slide presentations, and see if we can't get to richer discussions in our sessions by having some front-loaded data you guys have had time to think about. So hopefully I'll keep this to 7 minutes or so is my goal. And we can get into better discussion when we meet. But this is just some quick definitions and first glances at data. This represents MA's student body with the four English proficiency groups. And so English only students represent about 54% of MA, which means 46% over here speak a language other than English, or at least have that language in their lives. It might be their parents mostly speak it, and the kids probably understand a bit or maybe speak fluently. But we'll be looking at a subset of the English learners. So English learners are 17%, but we'll just be looking at the long-term English learners, and we'll talk about that definition in a few moments. Where does English learner status come from? In case people don't know, it's out of a Supreme Court decision from 1974, basically when San Francisco schools integrated in the mid-60s. Some of the kids who had gone to Chinese-speaking schools in Chinatown and the immediate neighborhoods around were forced into English-only schools or English-speaking schools. And the parents of those students said, hey, this is creating a situation where our kids can't understand the classroom. They can't understand what's going on, and their education is inaccessible. And so that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with the parents unanimously. And they cited in doing so the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on nation of origin, and a proxy for that is language. So the court recognized that there's no official language in the United States. The public is choosing to present school in just English, and so that presents an inequity. So the big quote that's taken away is there is no equality of treatment merely by providing students with the same facilities, textbooks, teachers, and curriculum. For students who do not understand English are effectively foreclosed from any meaningful education. That can be hard for sometimes coming from such a Brown v. Board perspective, which is put everyone together and everything's better for everybody. And that creates the best situation. When it comes to language, the court is recognizing that there needs to be difference in the way kids are treated because some kids can understand what's going on there and some kids can't. And so there needs to be mitigation for the students who don't speak the language of instruction, in this case, English. Across 3 years of our LTEL data team, this is how the data has changed, I'll say, although it's mostly the same. The biggest difference you see here is just the RFEP has gone up a good deal. Getting to RFEP has become a little bit easier. And so I think that's what we're seeing here. We'll talk about that a little bit more down the road. So here again is that same graph before, but now with LTELs broken out from the other English learners. So you can see these are the LTELs. It's almost equal, it looks like, to the ELs not LTEL. This is very new. In the past, it's been almost 2/3 LTEL, 1/3 not LTEL among the English learners. So this is a new balance. Again, I think related to more LTELs or ELs in general moving towards RFEP, probably more LTELs than other ELs moving towards RFEP, and really an influx of immigration in the last couple of years, post-pandemic, I guess, that has created a bit more students here. But it's about almost 10%. 1 in 11 students at MA is an English learner with 6+ years in the United States. Overall, the 190 some kids in this category are the lowest number we've seen in my memory, at least. So it's a little bit down, but still important for us to concentrate on. I'll talk about this part here a little bit more later on. Here's the legal definition of long-term English learners. It is created by California legislation. It's 6 years in the United States or more if you're an English learner, and also one of these two things, that you have not progressed progressed a level on the LPAC for 2 or more years, and for 9th graders, if you have scored standards not met on the CASP ELA in 8th grade. So legally, it's these two things. In Sequoia Union, we mostly just talk about this one. The rest of it's hard to track. We don't have a good data system for that. So we may get there soon. We probably have to get there soon. But right now, we really just talk about the timeline, 6 or more years in the US. We talked about where the idea of ELs comes from. So where does the idea of LTELs come from? It was again created by California legislation after the publication of a report called Reparable Harm in 2010, which basically said we've had ELs in California now for almost 40 years, and we're seeing this phenomenon of some kids never getting out. So what can be done? What do the kids need? Are there ways to mitigate that right from the start? Are there ways to mitigate that once it's happened? And what do we need to do? M-AHS are mostly have been around since kindergarten. That's true statewide as well. And just to throw it out there that there is, for all schools, a dual responsibility to all English learners, not just LTELs, to provide a program to overcome language barriers and also to provide access to the core curriculum. So it's a dual responsibility, both of those things. So how is it one can be an EL for 9, 10, 13 years in some cases? Or I guess first, how does one become an EL? And it is through first enrollment in California, through a home language survey. If any of the questions on that survey indicate a language other than English, the students are tested. And if they are not shown to be proficient in English at that time, they become English learners. If all questions say English, the student is declared English only, and that will never change for that student. If a student has a language other than English and their initial LPAC says that they are fluent English proficient, they are initially fluent English proficient, and that also never changes. But English learner status can change. You can become reclassified and become an RFEP student. So how does one remain an EL for 10 or 13 years or 6 or more, basically? There are 4 criteria to become RFEP. One is a top level on the LPAC. One is a teacher recommendation, usually not difficult. There might be 1 or 2 kids who meet the other testing criteria, and a teacher says, I'm really not sure. Usually that's related to attendance and not turning in work, and the teacher saying, I really just don't know. Parent opinion and consultation. I've never had a parent say, no, please don't redesignate my kids. And really, they don't need to approve. We just need to consult with them. So this is kind of a slam dunk. And then the last one is a test of basic skills, which is normed to English proficient students that shows the English learner can now effectively participate in the curriculum designed for native speakers. This is traditionally the hardest one. As I said, it's gotten a little bit easier, and that's related to more tests. The CASP now has a Lexile, which we can pull out and use. We administer our own Lexile test, and many students do that several times a year. And then just last year, Sequoia Union High School District added the, if a C or minus or higher is a C minus or higher is attained and a UCB requirement approved course, that can count too. So that gets to the effectively participate in a curriculum designed for native speakers. If they have that C or C minus or higher, Sequoia is saying that should suffice. However, I think a question comes in when we're talking about it being normed to English proficient students. Is that going to be normed enough? LA Unify went to this a few years ago. Others have moved that way too. My guess is eventually the state could close this possibility. Not calling it a loophole, but this possibility. But for now, this is the criteria. So an English learner has failed to reach this criteria, all 4, across 6+ years. Carla Chavez developed this for us last year, and that just shows that same thing graphically. Home language survey shows a language other than English, initial LPAC. If that is initially fluent, IFEP. If not, they go to EL and take an annual LPAC, and then are annually compared to the criteria. If it doesn't meet it, retest, and it just goes around and around here. Or if it comes out, all these are good, go to RFEP. And then after retesting for 6+ years, one becomes an LTEL. One quick note, we're about to wrap up, but one quick note, it's important to see that, that these are all the kids who speak a language other than English, who could have become LTEL, but many are IFEP, 13% are IFEP, 60% are RFEP, and it's just this remaining quarter, a little bit more than a quarter, who are LTELs. The crisis of LTEL is shown here. We talk a lot about the ELD students and how to support them, but really they do a lot better in the blue represented areas here. So they have more high-end GPAs. This is first quarter. More at every level until we get down to just below 2.0 is almost equal. And then LTELs have far more below a 1.5. So there's far more crisis among LTELs than the ELD, EML students. So half the ELD students, 2.5 or higher versus 1 out of 7 LTEL students. So really the LTELs can blend right in. Orally, often in class, their oral language shows almost fluent-like status, but it's sometimes in the reading and writing that we see the difference. So last thing, goals for 23-24 LTEL data team. For now, I have 2 goals, but I also want to know what goals you would like to see come out of this year's LTEL data team work. My goals, I think, are to engage department chairs in a discussion of LTELs. Either they could come in and see us during the second semester, or we could just send out stuff to them, information, data, and hear back what they're thinking. And then also to develop a timeline for publicizing current results, best practices, etc. As we go through the semester, and then to follow through in future years. Okay, that's what I've got. Thank you very much.